So the new construction home market has been the last thing holding up the real estate sales industry for about the last year and a half. The resale home inventory availability has been struggling. Nobody wants to sell their existing home and get rid of their 3 or 4% mortgage rate. So new homes are really the only place that new inventory has been coming onto the market. But there's some cracks in the armor. New home sales have fallen 8.7% in August. So it's starting to show that even the new homes are being affected by the interest rates. And it's going to get worse. Interest rates now have climbed to really near 8%. It's very likely that they're going to be at 10% relatively soon, within the next year and a half or 2 years. Matter of fact, we predict that by 2025, maybe the end of 24, you'll see double-digit mortgage rates, 10%. Why is that? Well, a lot of people think that rates are high now because they're in the 7% range. Historically, 7% is actually a pretty good rate. If you go back 20 or 30 years, most of the time the rates were in the 7 or 8% kind of profile. The reason that they're going to go above this profile is because the Federal Reserve has now announced that the current rate level is what they call the natural rate. 5.5 to 6% on the Federal Reserve rate, which isn't the mortgage rate, it's what the Federal Reserve sells money for, is considered to be natural. What does that mean for mortgage rates? Well, over the next year and a half, the Federal Reserve is going to see that inflation is still creeping up. So they're going to have to bump their rate up above the natural rate. Mortgage companies have to mark that rate up to make a profit. So if the natural rate is 5.5 or 6%, they have to bump it up a few percentage points to basically run their business. Normally, the mortgage companies have to bump that rate up 1.5, maybe 2%, 2.5 in some cases to make a profit. But because of the fact that mortgage volume is down so dramatically and the risk is higher, they're going to have to bump that rate up maybe 3.5 to 4%. So do the math. If the Federal Reserve rate is around 6 and the mortgage companies have to bump it up 4% to make a profit, now you're at 10. 10% mortgage isn't low, but there have been many times in the market that mortgage rates have been in the double digits. Back in the 80s, mortgage rates were 12, 14, even 18% for a brief period of time. One thing about the 80s that's similar to today is you would be coming off a period in the late 70s and early 80s of high inflation, high gas prices. Does that sound familiar? Where the government had to keep these rates high, and the other alternatives to the money, safe money, were in that higher rate range. So think about it. You can go to a bank right now and you can find banks that are offering CDs at 6%. So if you have money to place somewhere, why put it in a mortgage at 7 or 8%, which has risk? Somebody could default, you have fees, or put it in a CD at 6%. That's why mortgages will likely to go up around 10% within the next year and a half or 2 years. That will affect the housing market even more because fewer people are going to sell their homes. There'll be less buyers for new homes. There's also another troubling statistic that a lot of people didn't realize. Even as rates went up, new home purchases still went up a little bit overall, like 2%. Didn't go up that much, but still people are buying new homes, resale and new homes. But you would think that refinances would fall, right? Why would anybody refinance when the rate is 7% or 6.5%? Well, in the second quarter of 2023, refinances actually went up. The number of refinances jumped. Why is that? Well, nobody that refinanced had a rate less than 6.5%. I'm sorry, nobody had a rate that was higher than 6.5%. So everybody that refinanced at 6.5 or 7% were refinancing from a lower rate. Why would you go from a lower rate, 3, 4, 5%, to a higher rate? There's only one reason. Anybody guess? In case you didn't figure it out, it's because they needed to cash out. Why would refinances go up in a high rate environment unless people needed to take cash from their house? That's a troubling sign. That means that people are starting to run out of money and they have to pull out money from their house, even if it's going to cost them higher on the interest rate. I know you have an opinion about that. Let us know in the comments what you think.